Schwarzenegger, I've read that you guys actually hated each other for a while.
Well, we were very competitive. Yeah, I think hate's a good word. It is. Come on.
Sylvester Stallone is one of the most recognizable names in Hollywood history. He gave the world Rocky Balboa, John Rambo, and the Expendables crew. But behind the tough guy image in the blockbuster films, there is a very different kind of story. It is not a story about knockouts or battlefield glory. It is a story about grudges, betrayals, and clashes so intense that they sometimes make his movie fights look mild by comparison. Over the years, Stallone has quietly built up a list of fellow Hollywood stars he simply could not forgive. 6 actors, 6 stories of ego, broken trust, and bitter rivalry. Stay with us until the end, because every single one of these stories is worth knowing. And before we get into it, if you enjoy stories about the real lives behind Hollywood's biggest names, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. We cover the stories that the tabloids miss and the interviews that everyone talks about. You do not want to miss what is coming next. The first name on Stallone's list is Richard Gere, and the story goes all the way back to 1974. Both men were young and unknown at the time, scraping for any opportunity they could get on a modest, low-budget film called Lords of Flatbush. They were hungry, ambitious, and desperate to make something of themselves. But from the very beginning, their personalities were completely different. Stallone was all raw emotion. He had grown up rough in Hell's Kitchen, and that gritty upbringing poured into everything he did on screen. Gere, on the other hand, was the kind of actor who studied every single moment carefully, almost like he was performing Shakespeare rather than shooting a street drama. It was only a matter of time before 2 such different personalities crashed into each other. When that crash came, it was triggered by something almost embarrassingly small: a sandwich. The 2 men were crammed together inside a car for a tense scene. Stallone had a hot dog in his hand. Gere was biting into a greasy chicken sandwich dripping with mustard. Stallone looked over and told him plainly that the thing was going to drip everywhere. Gere brushed him off without a second thought. Stallone pressed further, warning him that if that mustard landed on his pants, there would be consequences. And then, as though the universe had decided to settle the argument, the mustard spilled. It went everywhere. Clothes were ruined, tempers flared, and whatever small chance there was of these 2 men becoming friends disappeared completely in that moment. What started as a disagreement over a sandwich turned into something far uglier. The tension between them became so overwhelming on set that a decision had to be made. Gere was let go from the film and replaced by an actor named Perry King. The official reason given was creative differences, but everyone on that set knew exactly what had happened. Stallone had made his feelings clear, and the production had sided with him. Years later, Stallone spoke about it openly and without much regret. He said that Gere had been given his walking papers, and that to this day, Gere seriously dislikes him. For Gere, the wound went deeper than just losing a small role. He had been pushed out over what amounted to a petty accident, and the story followed him through the years. The bad blood did not stay buried quietly. Stallone later revealed that Gere actually believed he had been the one spreading a particularly nasty Hollywood urban legend about him. Stallone denied it, but the rumor had already done its damage, and Gere's silence on the matter only made things more complicated. The 2 men's mutual hostility eventually surfaced in one of the most unexpected places imaginable: a dinner party hosted by Elton John, with Princess Diana herself as the guest of honor. According to Elton, the atmosphere turned sharp the moment Stallone spotted Diana deep in conversation with Gere. He was furious. Things escalated quickly. Voices rose. The 2 men came dangerously close to a physical confrontation before Diana stepped in and calmed things down. Stallone stormed out. Decades have passed since then, but the rift between Stallone and Gere has never really closed. The second name on the list is Eddie Murphy, and this one hurts in a different way because it did not start as a rivalry at all. In the late 1980s, Stallone and Murphy were 2 of the biggest stars in Hollywood. Stallone had Rocky and Rambo. Murphy had Beverly Hills Cop and Coming to America. But unlike so many celebrity connections that exist purely for appearances, theirs was a genuine friendship. They laughed together, spent time together, and seemed like the kind of friends who could handle whatever Hollywood threw at them. Then came 1987 and the production of Beverly Hills Cop 2. Stallone's wife at the time, Brigitte Nielsen, had a role in the film. On paper, that should not have meant anything troubling, but sets are strange, intense places. Long hours, high energy, and close quarters can blur lines in ways that people on the outside never fully understand. Before long, people began noticing what seemed like a particular closeness between Murphy and Nielsen. A laugh here, a late-night conversation there, small things that on their own might mean nothing. But gossip has a way of building on itself, and soon the tabloids were running with it as though it were confirmed fact. For Stallone, whether any of it was true or not almost did not matter. He was watching his wife's name get paired with his friends in bold print, and every new headline cut a little deeper. He did not go through lawyers or publicists. That was not his style. He picked up the phone and called Murphy directly. The confrontation was raw and intense. Stallone demanded to know if Murphy had slept with his wife. Murphy, for his part, told the story in a 1989 Rolling Stone interview. He said he had been completely straight with Stallone. He had not been involved with Nielsen. She was not his type. She was married, and she was married to someone he considered a friend. He said clearly that he was not that kind of person. But even a denial delivered with full conviction cannot always undo the damage that rumor has already done. Stallone's marriage to Nielsen was already fragile, and once doubt has crept into a relationship, it rarely leaves quietly. The friendship between the two men did not survive it. The third name belongs to a Hollywood legend, Kirk Douglas. By 1982, Stallone was no longer just a rising star. He was the defining face of American action cinema. Rocky had already become a cultural landmark, and now he was preparing to bring John Rambo to the screen with First Blood. This was not just a job for him, it was personal. The film was about Vietnam veterans, about forgotten soldiers, about survival and pain in a system that had failed the people who fought for it. Every line mattered. Every scene carried weight. He had worked hard to protect his creative vision, and he was not about to let anyone take it away from him. Kirk Douglas was one of the most powerful figures in Hollywood history. Spartacus, Paths of Glory, his reputation was enormous, and when he expressed interest in playing Colonel Troutman, Rambo's former commanding officer, it seemed like an extraordinary combination on paper. Two icons, one screen. The reality, however, was something else entirely. From the moment Douglas arrived, it became clear that he had not come simply to act, he had come to reshape the entire film according to his own ideas. In Douglas's view, the story needed to end with Troutman shooting Rambo dead. It was the artistic resolution, he argued, the moral conclusion. He announced it almost as a decree: Rambo must die. For Stallone, this was not just a creative disagreement, it was a direct attack on the message he had spent months trying to protect. Killing Rambo at the end would send every Vietnam veteran watching the film a message that the only thing waiting for people like them was death. That was the opposite of what he wanted to say. Douglas did not back down. He began referring to himself in the third person on set, announcing loudly that Kirk does not say these lines and that Kirk does not like these lines. He brought his own rewrites. He pushed for changes that would reshape the entire story around his character. The director found himself trapped between two unmovable forces and unable to do his job properly. Eventually, Douglas was given a simple choice: accept the script as written or leave. He chose to leave. What might have seemed like a disaster at the time turned into something surprisingly fortunate. Richard Crenna was brought in at almost no notice, memorized his lines on the way to the set, and delivered a performance that audiences now consider absolutely central to the Rambo franchise. His warmth and quiet authority balanced Stallone's intensity perfectly. The two men never reconciled. What had looked like a dream partnership had instead become one of the most bitter feuds in Stallone's career. The fourth name on the list is Bruce Willis, and this one is more complicated because it did not begin in bitterness at all. By the time the 2000s arrived, the era of the lone, larger-than-life action hero was starting to fade. Superheroes and CGI spectacles were taking over. For Stallone, this was not a reason to give up, it was a reason to do something bold. He came up with the concept for The Expendables, a film that would bring together the legends of the action genre in one place, not just for nostalgia, but as proof that the old guard still had something to offer. The gamble paid off. The first film earned over $270 million worldwide. The sequel did even better. Willis was part of it from the beginning, playing a shadowy CIA figure that gave the ensemble a certain edge and weight. For a while, everything seemed to work. Then came the negotiations for The Expendables 3. Stallone wanted to go bigger. Harrison Ford was already in discussions, but when Willis's team came to the table, their demand was staggering. 4 days of work, $4 million, $1 million per day. It was not a negotiation, it was an ultimatum. For Stallone, who had built the entire franchise on the idea of brotherhood and shared purpose, this felt like a betrayal of everything the project stood for. Attempts at compromise went nowhere. Willis would not move. Stallone made his decision, cut Willis from the film, rewrote the role, and brought Harrison Ford in instead. He publicly praised Ford's professionalism as everything Willis had failed to be.
Then came the Twitter moment that nobody in Hollywood could ignore. On August 6, 2013, Stallone posted publicly that Willis was out and Harrison Ford was in, calling it great news and saying he'd been waiting years for it. Hours later, he went further, calling his former collaborator greedy and lazy, 2 words that landed like a hammer in the entertainment press. Willis stayed silent throughout. Stallone doubled down. The fallout was real and lasting. Willis never returned to the franchise. But time, as it often does, changed things in ways that no one expected. In 2022, when Willis's family announced that he had been diagnosed with aphasia and would be retiring from acting, Stallone was among the first to respond publicly. He posted old photographs of the two of them together and wrote simply that they went back a long way and sent his best wishes to Willis and his family. He later admitted in interviews that the news had cut him deeply. The word greedy had never been formally taken back. But in that quiet public gesture, the feud had found its way to something quieter and more human. The 5th name on the list is Arnold Schwarzenegger, and this is perhaps the rivalry most people already know something about, even if they do not know how it actually started. The beginning came at the 1977 Golden Globe Awards. Stallone arrived that night as Hollywood's newest sensation. Rocky had made him a star, and he was nominated for Best Actor and Best Screenplay. It was supposed to be his crowning evening. Then a tall, broad-shouldered Austrian walked straight up to him, shook his hand, and introduced himself as Arnold Schwarzenegger, New Talent of the Year. Stallone barely registered him. He saw just another muscular hopeful hoping to break in. Then the awards were announced. Rocky was shut out across every category it had been nominated for, and the man Stallone had brushed aside walked up to collect the Golden Globe for New Star of the Year. As Arnold received his award, he laughed each time Rocky lost. For Stallone, that laughter was not just rude, it was a direct challenge. He grabbed a bouquet of flowers and threw it at Schwarzenegger's head. What followed was 15 years of relentless competition. They spent the entire decade of the 1980s trying to outdo each other, making bigger films, chasing larger box office numbers, and saying cutting things about each other in interviews whenever the opportunity arose. Schwarzenegger himself would later admit openly that they had genuinely hated each other during those years. He said they had been attacking each other constantly and doing genuinely stupid things out of pride. Stallone led early with the Rocky sequels and the success of First Blood and Rambo, but Schwarzenegger was not someone who accepted being second to anyone. The Terminator changed everything for him. Suddenly, the Austrian was not just competing with Stallone, he was standing right alongside him at the very top of the action genre. The war between them became one of the defining dramas of 1980s Hollywood, a rivalry so fierce and so public that it became part of the culture itself. It would take years before the two men found their way to something resembling mutual respect and then eventually a genuine friendship. But the beginning of that long journey started with a thrown bouquet of flowers and a room full of stunned onlookers who could not quite believe what they had just witnessed. These 6 stories, taken together, paint a picture of a man who has never been easy to work with, never been quick to forgive, and never been willing to bend when he believed he was right. Stallone built his career on the image of someone who refuses to stay down. It turns out that quality does not disappear when the cameras stop rolling. Whether it was a mustard-stained sandwich, a phone call about betrayal, a battle over a script's ending, a salary demand that crossed a line, or the sound of a rival laughing at his losses, Stallone responded the same way every time, with force, with stubbornness, and with the absolute certainty that he was in the right. Some of those feuds healed with time. Some never did, but all of them left a mark, both on the people involved and on the history of Hollywood itself.